My name is Diane Mercer, and the day my husband walked back into our house with another woman was the day my life split in two. Before and after that, this is Revenge Room Channel PLS. If this is the first time you are coming across our video PLS, kindly like, share and subscribe, thank you. I had been married to Kevin for 11 years. 11 years of cooking his meals, covering his debts, and believing his excuses. I was 43, a senior accounts officer at Hartwell Group, a mid-sized logistics company. Not flashy or loud, but steady, and very smart. Kevin was charming in the way that tricks you into mistaking it for love. He sold used cars at a dealership on the edge of town and was good at it, good at making things sound better than they were. I should have seen that pattern sooner. We had no children. Partly circumstance, partly his hesitation every time I raised the subject. Looking back, I think he always knew he was not planning to stay. That Tuesday evening in March, I came home from work just after 6. Groceries in hand. Coat still buttoned. I unlocked the front door and froze. Kevin was standing in our living room. Beside him stood a woman I had never seen. Her suitcase, burgundy, expensive, sat right beside my couch. She was already inside. Already comfortable. Already home. I stood in the doorway with grocery bags cutting into my palms and said nothing. Kevin looked at me with an expression I had never seen before, guilt mixed with defiance, like someone caught stealing who has decided to own it anyway. The throw pillows on the couch had been rearranged. She had already been making herself comfortable in my space. The woman smiled at me. Not warmly. It was the smile of someone told the battle was already won. "This is Nadia," Kevin said. "She'll be staying here." I set the grocery bags slowly on the floor. "She'll be staying here," I repeated. "I filed for divorce last week. My lawyer has the papers. You'll be served tomorrow." He said it the way you announce a change in dinner plans, casual, unbothered, like 11 years of marriage was a subscription he had decided not to renew. Then he added the words that would seal his fate. "You can use the guest room for now. Until things get sorted." He was telling me, in my own house, grocery bags at my feet, that I had been demoted to a guest. I looked at Nadia. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I almost smiled. Almost. I picked up my grocery bags. I walked to the kitchen and put every item away slowly and deliberately. Then I went upstairs to what had been our bedroom. Her toiletry bag was on the bathroom counter. A jacket hung over the chair I always draped my work clothes on. She had been here before. This was not Nadia's first visit to my home. That thought settled in my chest like a stone. I sat on my bed, the one I bought, the one I paid for, and breathed. Kevin appeared in the doorway. "I know this is a lot," he said. "It is," I agreed. "I just think it is better to be honest about where things stand." I nodded. No arguments. No raised voice. Nothing thrown. I think that confused him. He had prepared responses for tears, for shouting. He had no script for stillness. "We can talk about dividing things properly," he said. "I want this to be fair." "That is good," I said. He left. I waited until his footsteps faded. Then I pulled out my phone and opened the folder I had been building for 4 months. Bank records. Property documents. Email threads. Everything he believed I had never noticed. I had known something was wrong long before that Tuesday. I need to take you back to November, because that is where everything truly started. I came home early one Friday with a headache. Kevin's car was in the driveway, unusual, since he should have been at the dealership until 7. I let myself in quietly and heard him upstairs on the phone, his voice low and warm in a way it had not been with me in a long time. I did not go up. I sat at the kitchen table and listened to the tone of him, not the words, just the tone. I recognized it. It was the voice he once used with me. That evening I started paying attention differently. Over the following weeks I noticed things. A credit card charge for a restaurant I did not recognize, on a night he said he worked late. A receipt from his jacket during laundry, dinner for two at a place called the Copper Door. A text he quickly flipped face down to hide. I did not confront him. I photographed the receipt and put it back. Because I had learned something across 11 years with Kevin. Confront him early and he denies, deflects, becomes careful. I did not want him careful. I wanted him leaving evidence. So I watched. I waited. I collected. By February I had enough to fill a proper folder. And I had made a quiet call to a lawyer named Patricia Osei. Patricia had an office on the 4th floor of a downtown building, small but organized. She was calm-voiced and did not waste words. I told her everything. The receipts, the phone behavior, the late nights, my suspicion that Kevin was not only having an affair but planning something larger. And I told her about the house. The house was the most important piece. Kevin and I had lived there for 9 years. But it was purchased using an inheritance from my late aunt, $46,000 that I put down as the full deposit. The mortgage was in both our names, but I had made consistent payments throughout our marriage. Kevin's contributions were irregular, with 18 months where he contributed nothing at all. I had kept every bank record. Patricia listened and asked one question: has he ever formally added his name to the property deed, not the mortgage, the actual deed? I was not certain. She told me to find out. Over the following 3 weeks I checked carefully and quietly. Then I discovered something that would change everything. The house had been purchased in my name alone first. That was how the inheritance payment was structured at the original contract stage. When Kevin was later added to the mortgage, the process was rushed and handled by a solicitor Kevin chose because he was inexpensive. That solicitor made a critical error. Kevin was added to the mortgage liability, meaning he owed payments, but the property deed itself was never properly amended. A form needed to be signed and filed with the county records office. It was never filed. I only discovered this because Patricia sent a property title specialist to check the physical records. The title report came back clear. The deed listed one owner. Me. I sat in Patricia's office and felt a slow pressure release inside my chest. Not triumph. Something quieter than that. He has been living in your house as a co-mortgagee, Patricia said, but he holds no legal ownership claim. The unfiled amendment means the original deed stands. What does that mean for the divorce? I asked. He cannot claim the house as shared marital property the way he almost certainly believes he can, she said. I thanked her and drove home. Kevin was on the couch watching television. He smiled at me. I smiled back. After the night Kevin introduced me to Nadia, I did not fight or demand. I simply began moving pieces into position, quietly, like chess, always thinking ahead. Patricia and I had agreed on our strategy weeks before that Tuesday. Kevin's divorce filing had simply started the official clock. The morning after, I called my bank. I had opened a separate account 2 months earlier at a different branch. I had been carefully moving my personal savings there in small amounts. Not hiding money, simply separating what was mine from what was shared, because I knew what was coming. I moved the last of my personal funds that morning. The joint account, the one Kevin expected to access freely, I left with exactly enough to cover 1 month of utility bills. Then I went to work. I ate lunch. I answered emails. I came home and cooked a simple meal, which I ate alone in the kitchen while Kevin and Nadia ordered food and watched a film in the living room. I was not hurt anymore. Hurt had passed somewhere between November and March. What I felt now was focused clarity. That evening I sent Patricia one message: he served me. We are clear to proceed. She replied within minutes, filing the emergency property motion tomorrow. While Patricia filed that motion, Kevin and Nadia were settling in. They moved furniture around. They pushed my green velvet armchair, one I had found at an estate sale 3 years ago, into the corner and replaced it with one they ordered online. I came home to find it shoved aside like it was simply in the way. By the end of that first week they had redecorated entirely. New cushions, a new rug, candles on the mantel that were not mine. My books were stacked in a box by the stairs. On Saturday they hosted a dinner party. I heard it through the ceiling of the guest room. Laughing, music, chairs scraping across my kitchen floor. Kevin knocked on my door at 8. "We have guests," he said, as though that explained something. "I know," I said. "Have a nice evening." He seemed unsettled by that. He wanted me to object, to create a scene, to give him a story to tell about how difficult I was. I gave him nothing. On Sunday, my friend Colette sent photographs. Nadia had posted them online: the dinner party, the redecorated room, candles glowing on the mantel. Caption: Home Sweet Home. I screenshotted every image and forwarded them directly to Patricia. Those photographs hit me harder than I expected. I had been so locked into strategy, the documents, the legal steps, the careful preparation, that I had nearly forgotten to feel anything at all. But seeing my living room displayed as though it were hers made something tighten in my throat. I sat with that feeling for a while. I did not push it away. I had given 11 years to Kevin. I had carried us through 3 periods when his income dried up. I covered the mortgage alone for over a year when he was between jobs. I had done all of this quietly, because I believed in us. And now Nadia was hosting dinner parties on my floor. I let myself feel the full weight of that for one whole evening. Then I put it away. Because anger is only useful when it is cold. Hot anger makes you reactive. Cold anger makes you precise. I called Patricia the next morning. "How is the motion progressing?" I asked. "The hearing is 2 weeks from Thursday," she said. "We are also filing for full financial disclosure. Kevin must account for all income and assets declared during the marriage." I smiled into the phone. "Good," I said. "That should prove very interesting for him." 2 days after that conversation, I made another move. Kevin had always relied on 2 things connected to me: the joint account, now nearly empty, and the household utility accounts, all registered in my name alone. I called the electricity provider, the internet company, and the water authority. I explained politely that I was separating and needed to remove additional cardholders from the billing arrangements. None of them questioned it. My name was the primary on every account. I also canceled the streaming subscriptions, the grocery delivery service, and the gym membership billed to my card. None of this was dramatic. It was simply the removal of infrastructure that had been propping Kevin up for years. He noticed almost immediately. He came to my door and said the internet was down. "I canceled it," I said. "You are welcome to set up your own account." He stared at me. "The electricity bill is in your name?" "It always has been," I said. "You can arrange that in your name as well." "Diane." "Kevin," I said calmly, "you told me this is no longer my house. So I am no longer responsible for the bills." His face moved through several expressions quickly. "We will talk about this," he said. "Okay," I said. And I went back to my book. He called me 3 days later while I was at my desk at work. I answered on the 3rd ring. "The electricity was cut off," he said. His voice had a new edge, not quite panic, but getting close. "You did not set up a new account?" I asked. "I thought you were only making a point." "I was," I said. "The point is that you were never on these accounts. I was carrying all of this." A pause. "Nadia is furious," he said, as though I would find this concerning. "Okay," I said. "This is petty, Diane." "Kevin," I said, "I came home one Tuesday evening to find a stranger's suitcase beside my couch and was told to sleep in the guest room of my own house. I am not being petty. I am being accurate." He hung up. I sat for a moment, then returned to the quarterly transport reports I was reviewing. There was a real satisfaction in that, returning to my work, clear and functional, while his world developed its first serious cracks. That evening Patricia called. He requested a postponement of the financial disclosure filing, she said. His lawyer claims he needs more time. Of course he does, I said. The judge denied the request, she said. The hearing date stands. Patricia had filed the emergency motion 3 weeks earlier, and the hearing was 4 days away. The motion made 2 arguments. First, the property deed listed me as sole owner, meaning Kevin had no right to occupy or modify the property without my consent. Second, Kevin was removing himself from financial obligations while occupying property that was not legally his, a position the court could not permit. Kevin's lawyer, a man named Brendan Cole, filed a counter-response claiming Kevin's name on the mortgage established occupancy rights. Patricia had expected this. She had the title specialist's report, the unfiled amendment documents, and 18 months of mortgage records showing my consistent payments alongside Kevin's gaps. She also filed something Kevin had not anticipated, a formal notice that the property had been materially altered without the deed holder's consent. She attached Nadia's social media photographs. The ones captioned, "Home Sweet Home." The day before the hearing, Kevin appeared in my doorway looking genuinely unsettled for the first time. I spoke to Brendan, he said. He says there might be an issue with the deed. Might be? I said. He looked at me differently then. Like he was seeing something he had completely missed. You knew, he said quietly. I said nothing. He stood there a long moment, then turned and walked away. The hearing was on a Thursday morning in a pale gray courtroom with wide windows. The judge was the Honorable Claire Nwosu, who wore reading glasses and had an expression of measured patience. Kevin sat across the room with Brendan Cole. Kevin wore the dark blue suit from his cousin's wedding 4 years ago. He looked like a man who had not slept properly in days. Patricia presented the deed. The title specialist's report. The mortgage payment history. Documentation proving my inheritance had covered the entire deposit. And Nadia's social media photographs. Brendan Cole argued that Kevin's mortgage contributions, however irregular, established common law interest in the property. Judge Nwosu listened without expression. Then she asked Brendan Cole one question, "Counsel, can you produce a filed deed amendment naming your client as co-owner of this property?" A pause. The filing was not completed, Brendan said. Then the original deed stands, the judge said. She ruled the property remained under my sole ownership. Kevin had 30 days to vacate. All alterations made during the occupation could be subject to a damages claim. Kevin sat completely still beside his lawyer. Nadia was not in the courtroom. But I thought about her face when he called her with the news. He called me that same afternoon. I was making tea when my phone rang. I need to talk about the timeline, he said. 30 days is not enough. The judge set the timeline, I said. Diane. His voice had changed. The defiance was completely gone. What remained was something smaller. I am not in a position right now. I know you are not, I said. Brendan says the ruling might be appealable, he said. It might be, I agreed. But Patricia says the title documentation is solid, and an appeal would take months and cost you significantly. During which time the 30-day clock would still run. He was quiet for a long moment. Where am I supposed to go? He asked. It was an honest question. For the first time since that Tuesday evening I heard something genuinely real in his voice. I do not know, Kevin, I said. But that is something you should have considered back in November, when you were taking Nadia to dinner at the Copper Door. Silence on the line. You knew about that too, he said quietly. I knew about most of it, I said. I set my tea on the counter. Goodbye, Kevin, I said. And I ended the call. He came to my door 2 evenings later. I had just returned from a walk. I had started taking evening walks as the weather improved, reclaiming the neighborhood I had lived in for 9 years. He knocked. I opened the door. He stood with his hands in his pockets, exhausted in the kind of way that sleep cannot fix. I owe you an honest conversation, he said. I stepped aside and let him in. He stood in the hallway. He did not try to move further inside. I was planning the exit for almost a year, he said. I told myself you would be fine. That you were strong enough to move on quickly. You told yourself a comfortable story, I said, so that what you were doing would feel smaller than it was. He nodded slowly. I am sorry, Diane. I believed him. The apology felt real. I accept that, I said. It does not change anything. But I accept it. He looked at the floor. I really did believe you would be fine, he said. I am fine, I said. That part you got right. Just not in the way you imagined. He left without another word. I closed the door and stood still in the hallway for a moment. Then I went and made dinner. They were served formally the following Tuesday. Kevin received his copy at the house. Nadia was served at an address Patricia had traced. She still held a lease on a flat across town that she had kept throughout. Patricia arranged for both deliveries in the early evening, when Kevin was home and Nadia had just arrived. A neighbor named Terence, who noticed everything on our street, mentioned days later that he had been out front when the process server knocked. Nadia had opened the door. She read the first line of the eviction notice and her expression went completely blank. Kevin came to me that night. You had her served at the house, he said. Patricia handled the logistics, I said. She wanted both occupants to receive formal notice together. There were people outside, he said. I looked up from my laptop. Kevin. You introduced her to me in front of a house full of dinner party guests 8 days ago. He had nothing to say to that. He turned and went back down the hall. That night I heard him and Nadia talking in low, tense voices that grew sharper as the hours passed. Not quite shouting, but close. I put in my earbuds and went to sleep. The following days were illuminating. Through Colette and through the walls of the house, I learned things about Nadia's expectations that explained a great deal. She had believed Kevin was in a far stronger financial position than he actually was. She thought the house was legally his. She believed he had real savings and that his dealership job paid considerably more than it did. Kevin had been generous with her during the affair, dinners, weekend trips, gifts I now recognized on our joint credit card statement. She had read that generosity is wealth. She did not understand that he was spending money that was not entirely his. Now the bills were both their problems. The internet remained unconnected. The electricity was still unsorted. Kevin, who had never managed finances when someone else handled them, had not set up the new accounts he promised. I heard their arguments through the ceiling. You said this was handled. That was Nadia. It will be. It has been 2 weeks, Kevin. I am working on it. Working on it is not a plan. I sat in the guest room and recognized those exact words. I had said them to Kevin myself, in this same house, more than once. Some patterns do not change. They simply find new people to repeat with. With 18 days left, Kevin came to the kitchen table with what he hoped was a negotiating position. He asked if we could talk there. I said yes. I am asking for 30 more days, he said. I need time to find a place. Nadia's flat is too small for both of us right now. Your housing is not my legal responsibility, I said. I know, he said. I am not asking legally. I am asking you as a person. I looked at him. If I had not found the property records, I said, if I had not known about the deed, if Patricia had not filed in time, where would you have left me? You were going to let that title confusion work in your favor. You were going to make me fight for ownership of my own house. He stared at the table. You had a plan, I said. You simply did not account for the possibility that I had one too. He nodded slightly. So no, I said. I am not giving you 30 more days. He stood. He picked up his coffee mug and brought it to the sink, such a quiet, ordinary gesture that it caught me briefly. Then he went back upstairs without looking at me. On day 26, Kevin stopped negotiating entirely and simply asked. He came to my door in the evening and stood in the doorway without strategy or argument, just a person who had run out of moves. "I made a terrible mistake," he said. "With all of it." "I know you did," I said. "If I could go back to November." "You cannot," I said. "Is there any version of this where," he stopped himself. "No," I said. "You are certain?" "Kevin," I said, "you moved a woman into our home and told me to sleep in the guest room. You had been planning this for almost a year while I was still making mortgage payments. There is no version." He looked at the floor. "I almost told you," he said quietly. "In January. I almost came clean." "What stopped you?" I asked. He thought about it honestly. "I was afraid of what it would cost me." "It cost you considerably more by waiting," I said. He left. I heard him and Nadia talking quietly for a long time. Less arguing than before, more like two people calculating what remained after a collapse and finding the numbers would not balance. I messaged Patricia to confirm the timeline stood. She confirmed the locksmith was booked for day 31. On day 28 I sat at the kitchen table and spread out everything I had collected across those 4 months. The legal process had done its work. But I wanted to see it all whole, just once, before it was finished. The receipt from the copper door. Bank records showing withdrawals Kevin made before filing, amounts matching no household expense I could identify. And the email thread from our shared laptop, the one where Kevin and Nadia discussed his plan, including the message, "She won't see it coming. She trusts me completely." I had read that line for the first time in December at this same table. It had done something permanent to whatever trust remained. But it had also made the path forward completely clear. I laid out the mortgage payment records. 18 months showing my consistent payments alongside Kevin's gaps. Tax returns. The inheritance documentation proving the original deposit was entirely mine. A clean case. Patricia had said so from the beginning. Kevin thought he was the one with the plan. He never understood I had been quietly building mine since that November Friday, sitting here, hearing his voice upstairs, warm in a way it was no longer meant for me. I put everything back. Made chamomile tea. Day 31 arrived on a mild Wednesday morning in April. I had arranged to be out of the house from 7. I stayed with my friend Audrey, who lived 20 minutes across town and had known about everything since February. She made breakfast and we sat on her porch talking about her garden plans, a trip she was considering, small and ordinary things. I was grateful for the normalcy of it, for the way life keeps running its quiet routines regardless of what is ending somewhere nearby. Patricia had arranged everything. The locksmith arrived at 9. A legal representative from her office was present to oversee proceedings. At 10:15, Audrey's phone rang. Colette. Kevin and Nadia had been given until 9 to remove their belongings. They had not finished in time. The legal representative gave them an additional 30 minutes, more than they were owed. By 10:40 they were out. I returned at noon. A small envelope sat on the doorstep, just as Patricia had promised. New keys inside. I stood outside my front door for a moment. The April air was cool and clean. A neighbor's dog barked down the street. A cloud moved across the sun. I put the key in the lock and turned it. The house was quiet. Completely mine. I walked through every room. The living room was missing the rug they had taken, along with the new cushions and candles. My green velvet chair had been pushed back toward its correct spot by the window, which I suspected was accidental. I straightened it to exactly where it always belonged. The kitchen was mostly undisturbed. The coffee machine they had ordered was gone. I did not want it anyway. Upstairs, the main bedroom needed a thorough cleaning. I opened both windows and let the April air move through. On the bathroom floor I found one of Nadia's earrings, a small gold hoop. I placed it in an envelope and asked Patricia's office to include it in the return of belongings documentation. Even at the very end, I did not want to be someone who kept what was not hers or discarded it carelessly. The earring was Nadia's. It should go back. That afternoon I called a cleaning company and booked them for Saturday. I ordered a new duvet. On Friday I bought 2 plants at the market, a fern for the kitchen windowsill and a small succulent for the bathroom. I moved back into the main bedroom that same evening. I slept better that night than I had in months. Deeply, cleanly, without once waking. Word moved through our social circle the way it always does, faster than anyone controls. Kevin's cousin Marcus, who had always been warm toward me, called to say he was sorry. He had not known the full picture before. Kevin's standing among people who had mattered to both of us shifted quickly. I had not engineered this. I had not called anyone or posted anything. I simply proceeded through the divorce and property matter legally and quietly. But people talk. And the story, a man who pushed his wife from her own home and moved his girlfriend in before the divorce was served, does not tell well in any company. Kevin called me once, about 3 weeks after the eviction. He said things with Nadia had ended. She had gone back to her flat. He was in a rental across town. He did not ask for anything. He just said it, the way you report the weather. I am sorry to hear that, I said. I meant it in the way you can mean something without it changing what has already happened. Our divorce was finalized 2 months later. The settlement was clean. Kevin received what he had genuinely contributed. I received everything else. It was fair. Despite everything, it was fair. There is something nobody tells you about the period after a long marriage ends. People expect devastation or triumph. They bring wine, ask how you are feeling, and want a clean answer. The honest answer is more complicated. I had loved Kevin once, genuinely and with the full weight of it. Not at the end, not for several years before the end, but once. 11 years is a significant portion of a life to share with someone, even badly. You carry the good parts and the wasted parts together and make peace with the whole shape of it. What I did not feel afterward was bitterness. I had feared bitterness most. I had seen it in other people, the way it calcifies, making a person hard in a manner that blocks not just the bad things but the good things too. I did not feel bitter. I felt clear. In May I took 3 days off and drove alone to a coastal town 4 hours away. I walked the beach each morning. I ate well. I read a novel that had been waiting on my shelf for 2 years. On the last morning I sat on the sea wall, watched the water move, and thought, this is what it feels like to belong to yourself again. 6 months after Kevin walked out with his boxes, I stood in my living room on a Saturday with autumn light falling in long bars through the window. I had repainted it myself, a warm sand color I had wanted for years. I hung prints from a local artist. I replaced the rug with one from a market with Audrey. The room was mine in a way it had never quite been before. Patricia had sent a card when the divorce finalized, to new chapters. That afternoon I had lunch with Colette and 2 other women. We laughed more than we talked about anything serious, the kind of afternoon that reminds you why friendship matters. That evening I sat in my green velvet chair with a glass of wine and a novel, the fern on the windowsill visible through the doorway. I had not ruined Kevin's life. He had made choices and faced their consequences, which is a different thing. What I had done was simpler and more important. I refused to let those consequences become mine. I had seen the trouble coming. I prepared. I protected what was mine with patience and precision. That was not revenge. That was a woman who finally understood her own worth. And kept it. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and share.